All right, guys, we're gonna get started. So welcome to the web design decal. This is the first in-person decal we've had in 3 years. So it's really exciting to see all of you in person here. Yeah, we can just hop right in just to be sure. Can you guys in the back hear me? Okay. Okay, sounds good. So just some statistics about you guys. We received more than 275 applications this semester. So you guys should be really proud of the fact that you're here. And yeah, we're really excited to guide you through the web development curriculum. We're excited that you want to explore web design with us. Yeah, let's go. So a question you should ask yourself is, why should you be excited for this class? And that's the question that we're supposed to answer. Basically, we're going to give you the tools to create like beautiful websites like this. This is actually one of the websites of a former web design decal instructor, Sean Park, who graduated like a long time ago, but it's fine. Yeah, so obviously on the internet, there's like a bunch of different information. Not all of it looks super good. Like this is Wikipedia. It's like okay looking, and then the 61B. But yeah, we'll be able to take this and then change it into something more beautiful, like our web design decal website, even though it is quite outdated, but that's not important. Yeah, so we're just gonna teach you guys how to make websites beautiful. These are some like final projects from students in previous semesters. So the final project is basically where you guys can create whatever website you want, and it's pretty much up to you to decide what you want to create. So this person created this nice, I don't even know what this is, but like it looks pretty nice. Yeah, so like it can be whatever thing you want. So this one's a sushi bar theme. Yeah. So basically like the curriculum, what you're gonna learn in class is basically split into programming and design. So for the programming section, we're going to spend 1 week on HTML, which is this lecture. And then weeks 2 to 6 is CSS, which is how to make your website look different ways. And then week 7 to 11 is JavaScript, where you're going to be adding basically functionality to your website. So it can do things like send or like, I guess, change image sizes and stuff like that. For the design section, the first week, we're just going to go over fundamentals, which will be next week. 2 to 6 is user interfaces, and 7 to 11 is just exploration and design. Yeah, so I guess we can go through some introductions right now. So I'm Steven. You might have received an email from me like earlier, but hello, I'm a junior majoring CS. I took the web design decal in fall 2020, so 2 years ago, and I also TA'd for it for about a year. And yeah.
Hello, I'm Kelly. I'm a third year studying EECS and also pursuing their certificate in design innovation at Berkeley. I took the web design decal in my second semester of a freshman year, and Stephen was actually my TA. So although I've never like taught this class formally, I've always been really interested in like web interfaces and design and how like the two meet. So I'm really excited to be teaching the design portion of this decal. And,
yeah, we can go through our amazing TAs who are all sitting there. Oh no, you're good. You're good.
I'm Brian. I'm a junior studying CS. Yeah, and if you're in my cohort, you will receive an email shortly after. If you are in my cohort, I'm very excited.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm a junior also studying CS, and I took this decal with Kelly and Brian actually in 2021. And yeah, excited to be all that.
I'm Evan, a junior studying CS as well. I've not taken this decal, and this is my first time teaching, but I'm super excited to teach y'all.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly. I'm a sophomore studying CS and DS, and I, like Evan, have not taken this decal, but we're both very excited to teach it.
Oh yeah, those are some quick introductions. So I guess we can get into course logistics. So this lecture that you're in was on Thursdays, 8 to 9:30, SOTA 306, every Thursday. And Monday, we were allotted SOTA from 9 to 10 p.m., but we figured that no one would come for Monday class at 9 p.m. So we're moving it to Zoom at 7 to 8 p.m. on Mondays. And that's pretty much lab activities. So you're going to be in your cohort talking with your lab TA for like the weekly lab assignments that we release. And then Thursday, it's just lecture, and it's just split into programming and design. I'll be teaching the programming sections, and Kelly will be teaching the design sections. Just a reminder that we're a 2-unit decal PNP, so don't expect to get like a grade for this class or a letter grade. Yeah, so overall, like assignments, we have homework and lab assignments pretty much every week, as well as one midterm project and final project that we'll get into like when the time arises. But homework assignments are 4 points. They're released on Thursdays right after lecture, and then due the following Thursday right before lecture. Lab assignments are 1 point, which are basically mini homeworks, and those are released at the beginning of lab and also due at the beginning of lab the following week. Yeah, so late assignments, please try to submit your stuff on time, but we are pretty lenient. We give up to like 50% credit on the score you would have gotten if you submit it late. But if you do submit late homeworks to labs, please email your cohort TA that you're submitting it late. Otherwise, we will not grade your submission because we're not going to go and check like which have been submitted late. Yeah, so Monday labs, since they're on Zoom, it's just doing like one Zoom call with a bunch of breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms we label with your cohort TA. So just join this link and then go to your cohort TA breakout room. And then the first lab, which is on Monday, they'll do some like quick introductions, maybe a mini lecture, and then you'll get into the lab assignment. Yeah, lab assignments 1 point, programming and design. And I guess this is the lab, like I guess the labs are your chance to meet people in your cohort. It's kind of sad that it's not in person because that's probably more conducive to like meeting people than Zoom, but no one wants to come here at 9 p.m. on Monday. So that's how it is. Thursday lectures, I already talked about this, 8 to 9:30 p.m. We are mandating 5 attendances throughout the semester starting after this lecture. There's about like 10 lectures total. So we're also pretty lenient about that. But yeah, that's the lectures. We are recording lectures and you can see it on our YouTube channel. We'll try to post the podcast by like the next day, but there's no guarantees. So we really encourage you to come in person because I guess if you start the assignments late because the lecture is late, that's not really on us because but yeah, we also teach better when there's more people here. So yeah, please come. Grading, it's like you need 70% to pass this class, which is very low. Like pretty much everyone passes this class. It's just homeworks and labs are 40% of the grade. The final project is 32, and then midterm project is 28%. Communication. So I hope you guys all enrolled in Ed. You should have received a link in the your acceptance email. And Ed is basically just a discussion forum if you take a CS class where you can like ask conceptual questions. You can also ask logistical questions, and there's will be a link to like our office hours and like Notion pages on Ed itself. For Notion, you can use this to access like lecture and slide recordings, which will be useful if you're just trying to review. And you can also download homework and lab assignments from Notion because that's where we're going to be releasing all of them. And then GitHub is how we're going to be submitting homework this semester because we used to have like this nice portal, but it broke and no one wants to fix it. So we're using GitHub now. And you're basically going to submit your assignments through GitHub, and we'll get more into that at the end of the lecture. But yeah, just make sure that you have access to Ed, and then from Ed you can see Notion and then also the GitHub setup. Yeah, this is just the Ed link. Yeah, I guess Ed etiquette, just ask questions on Ed, and then please don't post screenshots of your code publicly, or else we'll have to like flag you for I don't know, like academic integrity purposes. So if you have a code snippet, just please post it privately so just the TAs and the instructors can see it. And then office hours, we hold office hours for each TA or instructor hosts 1.5 hours of office hours throughout the week. Just like drop in, it's on Zoom. So just email us 12 hours beforehand if you plan on coming. So we know like roughly who's going to come and how many people are going to come. And yeah, it's pretty much just a place where you can get like homework help, lab help, or just ask any like web development questions. Yeah, please come to live lectures and labs. All right, this is like the part of the course that's pretty sad, but I mean, it's not that sad if you don't cheat, so please don't cheat. These resources, you guys might not have heard of them, but if you haven't, please don't use them in this course. These are basically like libraries that automate the web development process for you. And since we're trying to build fundamentals here, please don't use these resources in your assignments. Yeah, for homework, no outside resources allowed. All the information you need can be found through the slides, or I mean, if you need like Google stuff, Stack Overflow is helpful too. That's fine too. Projects, no HTML, CSS libraries or resources allowed either. JavaScript libraries are allowed for the final project, but we'll cross that road when it gets there. Yeah. So, oh. Can you guys tell me if this is okay? you can just like say yes or no. You guys are so good. All right, what about this? That is correct. What about this one? Yes, no. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is fine. This is what all of you guys should be doing. Don't do the stuff above that because that's bad. Yeah, we'll have to punish you with the academic integrity office, but hopefully we don't have to go to that point. So please don't cheat. Adding and dropping the class. So a lot of you emailed me asking for like the course number and permission code. We're gonna be sending out enrollment codes to everyone tonight right after lecture, just because had like acceptance deadlines right before lecture. And we just need to like organize the student rosters. So yeah, you'll receive the enrollment codes today. And I think the add deadline is like next Friday, and also the drop deadline's next Friday. So just be wary about that. I suggest against using your late drop on a decal because that's kind of a waste. So if you plan on dropping the class, even though like we'll be very sad to see you go, please email your cohort TA and please drop before the 14th. Yeah, and then one thing you'll need for the course is like a code editor. We recommend VS Code, and that's the only editor that we'll be providing support for. So yeah, download VS Code. It's pretty, I guess, intuitive to use. But yeah. All right, now I'll hand it off to Kelly to get started with like the HTML lecture.
Okay, now that we kind of went over the logistics of the course, it's time to start our first lecture and the first topic, which is structures of websites. So before we actually start like designing and developing the websites, it's pretty important to learn what a website actually is and like what their structures consist of. So this lecture will aim to provide that like building block structure and also just like some context as to like what to expect before starting to get into the first homeworks and labs. So just as an overview of tools that you can expect when you approach web development, we've kind of organized it up into three main buckets. The first one being like the most high fidelity version of what the website would look like. And the last one, which is prototyping, being like the lowest form of like what the website actually looks like. So starting from the left side, we have the web browser, which consists of things like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, basically things you can host your website on and like the actual visual of what the website will look like. And then if you take a step back, we have the code editor, which is all the code that can like builds the website itself. And what's even mentioned of like using Visual Studio Code, those are the editors that you'll be using for actually coding up the website that you'll see on the web browser. So other text editors that we will not support include things like Atom, Brackets, Sublime, but don't worry about that yet. And then finally, we have prototyping, which consists of the design portion of this class and kind of like the lowest fidelity, I guess, of a website that you can imagine. And when we think of prototyping, it's like essentially a non-functional version of the website. It's like essentially a visual of what the website might look like. And you can use things like Figma and Adobe and Illustrator to kind of visualize that up, but obviously it won't work in like a way that an actual website does. Yeah, this lecture will cover kind of like 5 main topics, and we'll start off by going over the structure of websites themselves. So first, let's define like what a website actually is. So we can divide it up into 3 kind of like breakdown. So the first one being a website, of course, which is traditionally a set of web pages that is served on a single domain. And we can kind of go into what a domain looks like in the next few slides. A web page is a document that's usually written in HTML. And we'll talk about what HTML is, but you can kind of think of it as like the foundation for what all of your code will exist on and build off after. A domain is an address. So for example, a web design address, wdd.io, that represents the server where all of these files are located. So your HTML files, your CSS files, your JavaScript files, like all the files that you'll create for making the website. Let's go through this example a little bit. You might be kind of wondering why there's a fire station on the slides. When we approach something like surfing the web, what we want to do is kind of like look up the address, right? So one of the first things we might do in this process is enter a search term. So let's say I'm in like Google Maps and I'm entering a search term called fire station. One of the results that might pop up is the Berkeley Fire Station. So that's like how I would literally search up an address. But if we think about it in kind of like a website format, this is, I know like you guys have probably like done this before, but like this is how you would search up an address in like your Google Chrome browser, for example. So we'd enter it in that search bar and then it would route us to this IP address, which is like the domain that our website is served on. And once that kind of is entered, the computer will kind of just like fetch that file or the code that you guys have written up to make the website. And in the computer itself, like this file might be like running in the background. Obviously, you won't like see this on the screen, but this is where all of the nitty-gritty stuff that you guys will be learning about that was written for the web page exists. And obviously, yeah, it doesn't show up, but it will get rendered and turn into something like this. And you'll see this on the page. So let's break that down a little bit into more of like a technical sense. So we have two ends of a website. Roughly speaking, we have the back end, which again is like all the code that we looked at previously and what the users can't see. So things like databases, things like all the files that exist in like the front end of it, like HTML or CSS. And then we have the front end, which is what users can actually see and what happens in the web browsers. So things that you can click on like buttons, text, like images, headers, all those things that will visually appear on your website will be there on the screen for you to see. And let's break that down even further by looking at the different languages that a website might be made of. So when we think of the three main languages that we'll be teaching in this class, we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML kind of provides the structure, so you can think of it as like the skeleton for how the website will navigate and also just like appear. CSS is kind of like the design. So you can edit things like the styling with CSS, like the color of certain elements, the size of certain text, and JavaScript provides the function. So more of like a backend type of thing where, you know, let's say you want to build like a picture carousel, like the JavaScript will allow you to like move the pictures left and right. That's kind of like a basic example. Like obviously we won't go through that yet, but let's talk about HTML, which provides the structure of the page. So just as a brief definition, HTML stands for hypertext markup language, which like doesn't really give much into what it is, but essentially it defines the content of the page. So it tells you like what will appear, like the text, the links, and the images. So this is kind of like providing the computer like the knowledge of what element will appear on the website. And this is kind of like what it might look like. I know it's like not the prettiest or like most intuitive to understand what this does, but we'll break that down a little bit in this class. Essentially, this is like kind of what an HTML file might look like. CSS provides the design of the page. So I said previously that HTML defines like what exists on the page. CSS will take what exists on the page and provide the design for it. So let's say HTML says like, I can put a text element on this website. CSS can take that text and like make it into something prettier than just like a random text blob. Like it can put the color on, like make it a different text weight, different font. So basically it defines the rules for the appearance of what that content will look like. And you kind of need both to coexist with each other because obviously we don't want like an ugly website, but we also can't have a website at all if we only have CSS. And CSS stands for cascading style sheets. This is what CSS might look like. So it's a little bit more organized, I would say. Like you can kind of see what each element is styled as, but again, we'll kind of go over this in a bit more detail, I think next lecture. And then finally, we have JavaScript, which provides the function of the page. Some examples include, like I mentioned, like a picture carousel or like drop-down menus, tabs, basically anything which requires human interaction. And for something to like, you can think of it as something like that changes in the website. So HTML and CSS are rather static ways that you can code up a website, but JavaScript allows for more of like the human interaction portion where things might like change behind the scenes, but it's not necessarily like a visual like code language. And this is an example of what a JavaScript file might look like. In JavaScript, we focus on writing functions, so it's a little like less easy to interpret, but yeah, we'll go over that later in this course. Cool, so here's an example of like how all these files might be situated in one of your folders. For example, when you get your homework folder for this week and your lab folder, this is kind of what the zip file might break down into. So typically you'll have like your HTML files, which will consist of each web page, like I mentioned in the website. So here, like we have like evacuation.html, housing.html. So this might be a website for like housing, I don't know. And then we might have like CSS files where it'll define the styling for all those pages. And then we also have JS files, which are the JavaScript files providing the functionality for those pages. And also like at the bottom, you can see like .png, those are like pictures that might exist on those pages. So this is kind of an example of like what you might be working with in terms of like, if you were to actually code up an entire website, it's pretty helpful to be able to like see this and recognize it in your actual like computer. Yeah, let's get into the structure of a single web page. So going back to this like breakdown, we're going to be talking about HTML first. So essentially HTML is like an initialization that stands for, again, hypertext markup language. Hypertext is basically a fancy word for text that contains links to other text and files like web pages. Markup is another word for a code that represents some formatted bit of text, and language is the language as in like programming language. So HTML code is essentially, like if we break it down, a collection of tags related to each other in a parent child. So they're all kind of like nested in a way and relate to each other. So like I mentioned in the previous slide, all of the HTML files sort of link together into building this one website. What does that mean? So here's a kind of like a example of like what one line in HTML might look like. And in HTML, we use like tags to kind of like stipulate and provide the building blocks for what the content is going to be like on the page. So for example, like this content might be called strong. I guess that's not like an actual like tag, but in essence, like this is what the layout might look like. So we have the opening tag, which has like two like, I don't know what to call them, but like arrows like hugging the word strong. And then you have the content in the middle and then a closing tag. So essentially all these tags will come in pairs and they provide like the building blocks for the content. This is HTML code, and how we'll walk through the next few slides is we'll have the code on the left side of the screen and then kind of like what it might look like on the right side. So hopefully it'll give you like an idea of like how they go hand in hand, like the visual side and the code side. So it might look daunting, but if we like go through it step by step, it's quite easy to break down. So each of the bits that look like this, so with the arrows, they're called angle brackets on each side. They're called tags as well, like I just mentioned. Each of those represents like a part of your code. For example, the HTML tag, which is like followed by another closing tag, represents the entire document. So you might see that like there are two like tags kind of sandwiching the entire code. So that kind of just like gives you a breakdown of like how all these tags might like look like in the document. And then there are like other smaller ones that stipulate things like text and paragraphs, etc. Also notice that a lot of the times a tag is followed by like another tag that looks like it. And so in that way it's easier to recognize like what things appear in the order that they appear in. So example, like we have head and then body. So those are organized chronologically. Let's start from the top and then work our way down. So you can kind of follow along with the highlights. Essentially, like every HTML document should start with a line that looks like this and then has like exclamation mark doctype HTML. This tag kind of just tells our browser that what follows after this doctype is an HTML document. So it's just basically telling us that the document is an HTML language. The way to open up an HTML document is actually to like specific to HTML5, which is the 5th version of like an HTML code specification. But in previous versions, this doctype tag looks like different forms, but like don't worry about that. Just like make sure that you have a doctype at the beginning of your code. After the doctype tag, we can see our first pair of opening and closing tags, which is the HTML tag. That tag basically marks, again, the beginning and end of the whole document, and you should put all of that code within those two tags. Again, we can see that they're kind of sandwiching, like I mentioned, and then we can go into that a little bit more. So looking at the first kind of like block, we can see the head tag, which contains all the other info for the browser. Later, this is kind of where we'll include our CSS and our JS files, but in this very simple example, just know that the head tag will not actually display anything on the page. The head tag is essentially just for you to like stipulate what files as well as like what might appear on the tab. So in this example, we have like the title tags, which specifies what text that shows up on the tab of the web browser. So if you've like surfed the web before, you know that like on the tab, you'll see like the title of the website. That's what this is referring to. Then we can go to the body. Essentially, everything inside the body is what will show up on the page, opposite to the head tag. So in this case, we have things like paragraph and image. And I think Stephen will talk about that. This is still me. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess within the body tag, we also have the paragraph and the image in this case. So the paragraph text in this example refers to welcome to what it or like WDD. And in that case, like this tag stipulates what it's included in this paragraph text. So you can kind of just type whatever text you want to appear on it. And then secondly, we have image, and in the image tag, we have to reference a source. So like you saw in like the previous slide, we'd have like PNG files within our zip, right? So we can reference those files within the source by just including like the file path name. And then finally, we want to kind of like reference what this comment area looks like. So essentially lines that look like what it looks like on the screen with the like exclamation mark comment are completely ignored by the browser and actually don't show up on the page. So oftentimes in your homework assignment, if you see like the comments, that's usually a sign that we're just telling you like to do something or like giving you a comment, helping you to figure out what to code next. So don't worry about that showing up on the page. You can also use comments to kind of like guide your work for coding. Does anyone have questions? Now it's important.
All right, now we're basically going to be going to some like basic HTML tags that you might see or you have seen in the past. And these are basically all the HTML tags that you need for this class. Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of content and documents that can take on various forms. So I'm sure you guys seen like paragraph text, like bold and italics, headings, links, lists, and also images, which these are all core parts of a web page. And yeah, so we're gonna start off with text. So the way you insert text in like if you want to write a paragraph is with this P tag. It's in the same format as like all the other HTML tags with just like the bracket P and the /P. And the P tags basically have some auto formatting where if you have a P tag and you have another P tag after it, they're on like separate lines. So think of it like every P tag automatically goes to a new line after the P tag ends. So yeah, that's pretty much text. You're gonna be using this P tag a lot. And then for if you want to style your text, this is kind of like before you learn CSS, but these are just some styling options built into HTML because I guess these are very basic styling options. So if you want to bold it, use the strong tags. And then if you want to like italicize it, use the EM tags, which are emphasized. You can also nest tags within each other. So if you want like italicize different and bold different, and then also a bold text, then this is how you would do it. One thing to note is that if you start, for example, we did the strong tag first, and then we started the M tag. Since we did the M tag after the strong tag, we have to finish the M tag before we end the strong tag. So you can't have like strong M and then strong M. You need like strong M, you finish the M tag, and you go close off the strong tag. So this is the only way that you can do nesting. Please don't like switch them around. But yeah, this is how you nest tags. And yeah, so I think I'm sure like whenever you guys go on a web page, you see like different headings that indicate like how important something is, like from a visual perspective. So in HTML, there's headings 1 through 6. H1 is like the biggest, and then H2 is like smaller, and then and then H6 is the smallest bold entry like heading. You can like see for yourself like what looks right to you. It's pretty much up to your decision which heading to use, or we'll tell you in the homework assignment, but yeah, it's pretty much just preference. Yeah, and then links are really important. So if you want to go from one page to another, or if you have like 2 HTML files, you want one to link to the other, this is how you would do it with the A tag. And the href basically specifies like the link that you want to go to. So if you want to go to example.com, I don't even know what that is, but if you want to go to example.com, you just click it and then go to example.com from there. Yeah. Lists are also important. So maybe you have like a grocery list website. In order to make a list, you start off with the UL tags, and within the UL tags, you nest li tags within them. So every li is like an entry in the list. So apples, oranges, bananas. And yeah, the UL tag stands for unordered list, and then the li stands for list item. These are pretty useful. You might not see it that much in this class, but just know that they're there. Yeah, images are the only HTML tag where there's no closing tag. So I'm sure you saw it before when we have like li, you finish it off with like a /li. Image tags are different in that there's no like closing image tag. It's just a slash and then an angle bracket at the end. So keep note of that. And I guess the attribute for the image is the source tag, which is basically specifying where you're going to get the image from. So for example, the first one, the source tag is in like a specified folder called folder, and then apple.jpg. If you want to find an image on the internet and display it, then you can put in a link URL too, and then that will also work. Yeah, you'll get a lot of work with like images and resizing them in homeworks and labs in the future. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Okay, good. Yeah, so I guess we can just check for comprehension. So what do you think like this HTML does if someone just wants to like raise their hand? Yeah, exactly. So in the previous examples we showed, it was a link and then like the text will say like click here. So when you click like the text that says click here, it goes to the link. Instead of having text here though, we put an image. So when you click on the image, it'll go to wdd.io. So that's pretty much how you get images that are also links. Yeah, so I guess a lot of the tags seem very specific. Like what if you want to create something that you just want to structure the content, you don't want like pre-styling with like the p tag or anything like that. So we need like a generic tag, right? So I guess we can go off and start like if people just want to shout out like what tags do we see here? Yeah, div, h2, p tags, h1 tags. Yeah, y'all are experts at HTML now. Yeah, so you might have seen the div tag where the h2 and the paragraph tag are inside, and the div tags is probably the most useful tag you're ever going to see within HTML and also web development in general. Like if you go on to learn more like front-end frameworks like React, you're going to be using divs a lot in order to style your content. Yeah. Oh, I'm going into it right now. But yeah, basically div is empty and meaningless. It does pretty much nothing. But why it's important is that you can divide the page content for better structure. So for example, if you want to have like a fruit section of the page and a coffee section of the page, you put them both in a div, like put one div for the fruit, one div for the coffee. And afterwards, when we get into, I guess, like CSS class names and stuff, when we add class names and IDs to those divs, then you'll be able to style them with CSS. But that's in the future. Just know that divs are going to be really useful. Yeah, so I guess the summary is HTML is basically meant to structure content. It's not necessarily meant to style your web page. That's what CSS is for. But basic like functions like italicizing and bolding are already built in, just because I guess HTML, whoever invented that stuff, wanted it. But yeah, just know that it's meant for structuring your code or like your web page into meaningful chunks, and it'll like divs will help create layouts in the future. Yeah, so this is probably the part of the class where a lot of people get tripped up because I guess it's pretty new to them. These are file paths. So when you try to add an image, you have to specify where the image is, right? And a lot of like issues that maybe you guys will encounter in homework is that the image won't show up even though you have the so-and-so like correct path name. Yeah, so I guess if you need to specify like an image, you need to make sure that the path that you're using is correct. So for example, if you have this like a dog picture called doggo, and say for example you copy like the entire thing from like the I guess top of the like file explorer, like the C drive users Heidi pictures doggo, and you upload it and submit it to homework, we will not be able to see the picture because we don't have a Heidi folder, a pictures folder, and stuff like that within our own computers. So this absolute path is only specific to your computer. So please don't use these paths when you're submitting homework. Instead, you want to look at the file structure of I guess like the project that you're working on. So basically how you're going to see it like done in our class is that you'll always have the index.html, which is basically like the entryway to every single website. So pretty much every single website online is accessed through the index.html. And that basically renders all of like the website that you see when you're scrolling through. And usually we'll have like an images folder or like an assets folder where you can put images. So if you're in the index.html, like think like you're at index.html. In order to access like dog.jpg, you need to first go into images folder and then go into dog.jpg. So I guess no matter where you move the homework one, say like in the previous slide we had like it's in pictures. Say we moved it out of pictures into like, I don't know, some other folder, then the previous absolute path wouldn't work anymore. So using relative paths will make sure that like wherever you move the file or like wherever you move your homework one folder, like it'll still work. Yeah, also case sensitivity, make sure that your images are named the correct thing that you put into your computer, just because that might be an issue later on. Yeah, so we're just gonna go over how you're gonna see like homeworks and labs and how they're gonna be structured for like the project workspace. I talked a little bit about it beforehand, but basically you see the index.html is the entryway to basically every single web application website online. And the way that we like to structure it in web design decal, so we have the index.html, we'll have an assets folder, and within that assets folder, we'll have images, like an image folder where you can put all the images that you need for the project. And then we'll have a scripts folder, which is where you can have your JavaScript files, but we'll get into that. You won't have to worry about that until like more than halfway through the course. And you have your styles folder, which is where all of your CSS files will go. And then orders here is just for like, you won't see that in like normal homeworks and labs, but that's just there for like demonstrative purposes. Yeah, so back, I guess, to solidify what we were talking about, relative paths are when you're in a file and you want to specify a file relative to the file that you're already in. So for example, if you're in like the index.html and it's structured similar to this, where there's the assets, images, and then the author.jpg, in order to access it, you want to do assets, images, and then author.jpg, like in the first bullet point on the left that we have. The / in front of it will do the exact same thing. / just means like the current directory. So when you're at the index.html, you're in like, think of this whole gray box as like one folder, right? That's like the directory. So when you do / it'll stay in the same directory, and then you do / again to go into assets, you do / again to go into images. So with the / doesn't do that much. It's pretty much there just for demonstrative purposes. And then the 2 dots before the / means you go up one directory. We'll have an example on that later, I think. So we'll get into that later. But yeah, absolute paths are basically the complete path to another file. It's basically how your computer like maps, I guess, where things are on your computer. But once you upload it to the website, you won't be able to access the things on your computer anymore. So the website won't work. These are like how absolute paths work, but just don't use them in this class because they'll cause issues. Oh yeah, there's more explanation, parent directory. Oh yeah. So as I was saying before, in order to go from index.html to the author.jpg, do assets folder, images folder, and then author.jpg. Let's see. And that's kind of how the nesting goes. If you can map like first, second, and third. Yeah, make sure your relative path is correct. And then, okay, so say we're in like the otter1.html file and we want to access the otter.jpg file. The way we would do that is first you're gonna go up one folder. So doing dot will go up one folder in the directory. So you go from the otter1.html back out to the folder that the otters directory is in. So the entire gray box that was shown earlier, that's not gray anymore, but that's fine. And then after that, you're gonna go into the assets folder and then images folder and then the otter.jpg. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess some tips and tricks, just indent your code like you've seen in like the previous slides so that the HTML is still readable, because I guess if you can't see the indentations, the opening and closing tags are kind of hard to see where they match. Also, when you're editing a website, like in your VS Code, like once you make a change, save the file. Please save the file. Don't forget to save the file, and then go to your browser to see what it looks like. Try not to make like super big changes at once, because you might go from like something that's almost done to like a completely something that's not good to look at. Yeah, so if something doesn't look like the way you expect it, just double check your opening, closing tags, spelling, capitalization, file paths. Yeah, and also if you can't figure it out, just come to office hours and we'll help you out. Oh yeah, homework submission. Basically, how homework submission is going to work in this class is all the instructions are linked in this link that's covered by me right now, but everything you need is in there. Follow the instructions closely, like very closely. We anticipate a lot of like issues happening just because we're going to be using Git and GitHub in order to like deploy a website, and then you're going to submit your homework through that. This is the first time that we've done it just because our portal has been broken. So I guess since we're pretty good on time. All right, since we're pretty good on time, I can kind of just like go to the.
Like movie thing.
They have access to something.
I don't have it up right now.
Well,
It's like
you
shut-
disconnected the display.
No, I didn't.
What are you doing? Oh my god. Are we still recording?
No.
Oh yeah, so this is the GitHub submission setup. If you never used Git before, you might be a bit intimidated. But basically Git is just like a version control system. So say you have a file and you want to like add a function or something. You add the function and then, oh no, the entire thing breaks, right? In order to go back to like, if you want to like revert your changes, you can go back to the previous version of the file in Git and you can just revert it so that the file will still be what it was before you added the broken function. That's basically what Git is. Basically, these are the main commit like terminal. Okay, so basically the terminal for I guess Windows and Mac, the terminal is basically a way to navigate through your computer through your keyboard. So I can just pull it up right here. So this, for example, oh no. This, for example, is my terminal. So if you're on a Mac, then you can follow along. But if you're on a Windows, I'm sorry, I'm not that good with Windows. But yeah, so yeah, basically the commands that you're gonna, like the non-Git commands that you're gonna use a lot are ls. So ls basically in the directory that you're in or folder that you're in.
Keep going.
Okay. In the directory that you're in, ls will list out all of the things that are within that directory. So for example, oh yeah, basically these are all the folders on my computer. We can just cd to the desktop first. So this is pretty much everything that's on desktop, and yeah, it's just like a bunch of folders and stuff. And then cd is how you change directory. So say, as we saw before, like when we did it ls, you saw there was a desktop folder. So if I cd into the desktop, now I'm in the desktop like located. That's where like I'm located in the terminal right now. And I assume that most of you are going to want to clone your like web design submission repository to your desktop instead of like to your home directory. So you can like go on your desktop, edit the files, and then you can go from there instead of like going all the way to your home directory and then going. But yeah, ls and cd are the main terminal commands you're gonna be using. And let's see. So Git is basically the version control system I was telling you about. The entire like Git setup is here, but once you install Git, when you type Git, then there'll basically be like this very intimidating list of commands. But if you type Git and this shows up, that means you installed it correctly. So good job. But yeah, so basically the commands that you're gonna be using in this class are basically git add. So for example, if you edit the index.html file and you're in a GitHub, like a Git repository, which is like a folder managed by Git. Actually, I can just, that's a lot of work to, never mind. Oh yeah, but basically when you do git status, or git status will basically show you all the like files that you changed, and then it'll show you the path to the file. So say for example, I'm in folder 1 or something, and then I edit the index.html within folder 1. So when I do git status, it'll be like, oh, index.html has been edited. So I can do git add index.html, and that will basically stage the change. And then it won't be saved yet though, so you can still unstage it. But in order to like save the file, or like this version of the file, you do git commit -m and then just insert a random message. We're not checking your like commit message history, so you don't have to worry about what actually goes in. But it should usually be a description of what you changed, just for your purposes, like your own development purposes. But yeah, and then git push will push the change, like the commits to GitHub. And that's how we're actually gonna be able to see the changes you make. But yeah, that's pretty much the terminal. There's instructions for Windows and Mac on here, but basically what we're gonna be doing is like GitHub is this big company that manages a lot of Git repositories, and that's how we're gonna be accessing your guys's like submissions. So you're gonna make a website at the beginning that has all of your submission folders on it. And then whenever you push, then your submission folder or like submission website online will like update, and your cohort TA will have access to the website so you can see what you've submitted and what you haven't. But yeah, you guys can go through this. It might be a bit confusing, but come into office hours if you guys need help. But yeah, we can go back to the slides now. But yeah, basically homework 1 is going to be released today after lecture, and it'll be due. We're giving you 2 weeks to do it this time, just because we want to give people time to set up their GitHub submission repository. It'll basically just cover basic syntax of HTML and guide you through making your first website about you guys. You'll find it on Notion after the lecture, and yeah, feel free to ask questions at Ed. There's no shame in being confused for the first assignment. Yeah, so I guess these are the action items. Just make sure that you've been added to the course Ed. This is the link to the student portal on Notion where we're posting lecture slides, lecture recordings, homeworks, and labs. Install VS Code so you know how to like edit files, and then complete the GitHub setup instructions on the student portal before doing any homework. And yeah, homework is due 2 weeks from now. I guess since we're still good on time, I could just go through like example exercise on how you might see I can just go through an example exercise of like what you might see in terms of like a homework. So let me just set it up real quick. This is VS Code. This is where you're going to be editing all your files in. And whenever you can just do Control-O to open any folder. So what I want to do is open homework 1 folder, and then see. Yeah, index.html, this is where all the code is going to go. We'll give you all the starter code that you need. But if you want to start from like a blank, you're going to be starting for like a blank index.html from like your final and midterm projects. So I guess like, you can just search hello world HTML file. And then you can pretty much just copy like the very basic introduction. So just copy this in here. Yeah, and then save it. And then if we go actually to, let's see, homework 1, we open this in your browser, you'll see that this is like an example of an HTML page with 1 paragraph. I can edit the text here. So just split screen this, say we do this. Let's see. And then I saved it, but it doesn't auto refresh. You're gonna have to manually refresh it, and then it just refreshes like that. Basically what you're gonna see in homework assignments is that there'll be assets folder, and then here you'll have your image folder. And then basically you can put in any images that you want here. I should have prepared some images earlier, but I don't have any right now. So we can just go over other tags. So yeah, we can talk about the UL tag earlier. So this is if you want to create a list, just like, I guess, pineapple, something like this. If you see, it automatically updates. It's like magic. Yeah, these are pretty much the tags. And for homework, you're gonna see let's see if I have the homework on here. Oh, I don't have the homework on it right now. But basically, we're gonna upload the zip file online to the Notion portal. You can click on it to unzip it, and the first index.html file you see is the instruction page. And then on the instruction page, it'll be pretty intuitive, just like follow the instructions. There'll be like a download folder to download the actual assignment. Yeah, just follow the instructions, edit it with VS Code. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think, let's see. Oh yeah, that's pretty much the end of the lecture. If you have any questions, feel free to come up to us. We'll be here until 9:30, or if you want to set up your GitHub right now, feel free. But lab is on Monday, so we'll see you guys in the Zoom, and then lecture next Thursday, hopefully. But yeah, lecture is over.
We didn't give her a chance to download this.
Huh?
I feel like not everyone has this code. Because not everyone can.
Learning how to use Bootstrap.
Use what?
Bootstrap.
Oh, we're not.